Hi there, welcome to this Study Happy session. I'm Johnny, I'm one of the Study Happy ambassadors here at the University of Warwick. And today we're talking top isolation and lockdown tips. We're in this second lockdown. It's supposed to go on until the 2nd of December. And here we are around halfway through it. I wonder how you're getting on. Maybe you need a few tips, or maybe you could share some of your tips with us in the comments below about how you're getting through this whole experience. And isolation, so many students have had to isolate over the past few months. I am really lucky. I've sort of dodged it all around and haven't had to do that 2-week period, but someone I'm going to speak to in a moment has. I wonder if you've had to isolate and any tips you've got, and maybe if when you find yourself in that situation, and me too, we've got these tips that we can build upon and help us get through our isolation. So we're going to talk now to Gervaise, who's another Study Happy ambassador. Hiya, how you doing?
I'm well, Johnny. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Not bad at all. Now, you've done isolation before, the like 2-week period. What was it like?
It was a really interesting experience. I had to self-isolate back when I got to Cyprus in April, the end of April. And we had to do 2 weeks mandatory quarantine at the time. It was a very interesting experience simply because obviously you're back at home, but you're not able to go back at home immediately. I got the opportunity to do a lot of assignments while I was down in my isolation. But at the same time, though, I had a lot of time to myself, to reflect on the time of quarantine. I had a lot of chances to actually create, to read with the books that I actually managed to grab and pack into my suitcase just before I had to leave the country. But yeah.
See, I think of 2 weeks locked in because, you can't go out, you can't get your exercise. It's not like lockdown. I just think it sounds like the worst thing in the world. I don't know how you can be so positive about it.
I think I can be positive actually looking back on it now. I think at the time it was a bit stressful knowing that you're going to be in a room for 2 weeks. But I think it's really about the mindset that you go into it with, knowing that I was going to see my family at the end of the 2 weeks, knowing that I had to obviously do it because I want to keep my family safe, because I want to keep my friends safe. I think once you go into that experience, knowing that you're doing it for a specific reason, and at the same time, though, you know that you also have things to do, you have opportunities to sort of reflect on things. It's, as a whole, a really interesting experience. I wouldn't have said it was very negative. It was just a time period that I had to be there. Yeah.
So let's do a bit of a schedule. I want to know what your day looked like in isolation. What time did you get up? Did you have your regular meals? What was the structure of your day?
Well, the thing is, I think the first night that I got there, then the morning that I woke up the next day, that was probably my latest day. I think I woke up at 12, but my normal day would look waking up around 9 or 10, having breakfast, because they would bring us breakfast in the place that we were staying for our quarantine as part of the government. And the government was the one who was keeping us in quarantine. And so throughout the day, I'd basically just do my assignments that I had to submit. And then throughout the afternoon would usually end up going onto the balcony, sitting outside, getting some fresh air, getting some sunshine, talking to the people that were staying in the rooms next door, which were actually friends of mine from the university. And yeah, throughout the evening, it was more or less just reading, having an opportunity to look over my assignments again, submitting anything, catching up with friends, calling my parents, letting them know how I'm getting along. But yeah, very basic, really, I would say. Nothing really.
And I suppose, the time passes and you tick off the day and then the next day. I mean, I've had a good friend of mine who's had to isolate twice, actually, since being at Warwick. And I felt so sorry for him. And so I've gone and done his shopping and sort of stood, on the pavement very far away from him and had a bit of a chat. And I think it's also important to know that we will have friends and people we know in isolation and we can support them as well. Because it's so difficult and sometimes they need a bit of shopping and a couple of treats or whatever. I think that's really important here too.
Absolutely. I don't think I would have been able to get through my experience if I wasn't able to just call up my best friends who were scattered around the globe at the time, but just to call them up and be like, how are you doing? How are you coping? Let's have a conversation. So it's really important to keep in touch with people. Yeah.
I'm one of those people that if I'm in a room by myself for about 5 seconds, I'm going crazy and I'm calling people up and I try to keep myself busy. So my friends will dread the day that I have to go into isolation because they won't be able to get anything done. I'll be on the other end of the phone. But I suppose we can relate to it in some way if we haven't isolated before, because we've all done lockdown. The first lockdown, the second lockdown we're in the middle of at the moment. I know this one isn't quite as strict as the one before. But for me, it was just such a change of pace of life. I'm always like darting around, really busy,
Absolutely.
and it came along. And the first thing I decided was I was going to get up a little bit later. So I thought, what's the point? Do a bit of studying, get a bit of fresh air if you can. And the thing I really got into in lockdown, in the first lockdown, was of an afternoon, about 3 o'clock, calling it a day. And I didn't have work till 6 from home. And I just read my book. And I really, really got into it. And I think, and I still do it now when I've got the time. And I think we can pick up good habits from lockdown as well.
I know I definitely did. I mean, especially with regards, because I feel like once we get caught up, so obviously I'm a second-year law student. I think when we get caught up in our course so much, we're doing readings, we're doing different experiences that are so enriching towards our course, but then we actually forget to take that moment to ourselves. And I know I'm a creative myself. I like to write, I like to read, I love to create art. So having that opportunity during lockdown, during isolation, to actually come in touch again with my creative side was really, really important to me, because now I'm able to approach my course in a completely different way. I wake up in the morning, I do my readings, I do my lectures, but then I always prioritize having a moment to actually create towards the evening, because I think it's so important that I'm able to come home to myself in a way, if that makes sense. But yeah.
And we all have our own things like that. I mean, at the start of the first lockdown, I had a brilliant, well, probably really bad actually, relationship with chocolate, just all day long, and that would be it. And I'd leave the house just to go and get more chocolate. And then I decided, no, I'm going to, because I really like exercise, but I'd let myself sort of fall out of it. And I thought, no, I'm going to be serious. And so there's this app, Couch to 5K, and it talks you over the course of 9 weeks how to run a 5K. So it starts like, and then now it's just a part of my routine, and I love it. And that's another really positive thing I've taken out of this. And in this second lockdown, not in isolation, but in this second lockdown, you can go and have as much exercise as you like. And you can do it with someone from another household from a distance. So that exercise is so important, I think.
Absolutely. And I think the way that I've taken time for myself is I've always really done it, seeing as my mom is a sort of person who also meditates. It's like waking up in the morning and actually meditating and taking that 10 to 15 minutes just for myself. But then I've also really prioritized like taking the time to cook for myself. When people ask me, you know, how do you manage and do all these things in a day, and you're always running around and reading and lectures and seminars, I tell them that the two most important things to me are cooking a really good meal and making sure that I'm getting a good meal in, and also just getting good sleep in, which are two of the most vital things, I think. Being able to actually prioritize those two things is super, super important to me.
I can't agree more. And a tick list for every day. The night before you close everything up, you think, what have I done today? And you say yesterday, I crossed most things off. There's one thing I didn't quite make it. But get your tick list. Oh, we're the same. Oh, yours is a lot longer than mine.
Absolutely.
Get that tick list ready the next day. Because there's a real accomplishment when you can say, I've done all of that. And that is what I set myself for the day. Even if it's just little things. It's so important.
Absolutely. It really is. And being able to actually reflect on it and be like, all right, so, and not beating yourself up over the fact that you might have not have done something in a day. I think it's super important, because I think in isolation and in lockdown, you beat yourself up thinking, you know, I have to be super productive. I have to be doing things continuously because, you know, the real world doesn't exist anymore, but it does. But I think people just need to take a moment sometimes to be like, it's all right. You know, I didn't manage to finish this assignment today. I can wake up tomorrow, try it, I did it again. And I think if people actually beat themselves up less, they'd be able to be more creative and more in tune with themselves about what they actually need to get done, and sooner and in a more efficient way at the end of the day.
That's brilliant. And so there's some tips really for this lockdown. And then if you end up in isolation at any point, maybe you come back to this video and Gervaise's sort of insight into it should be able to help you. Thanks so much, Gervaise, for talking to us. And I'll let you get on with that tick list. Thank
you so much, Johnny.
There we are. That's another one of our Study Happy ambassadors, Gervaise. Thanks so much for being with us today. And I hope those tips help you if you end up in isolation, or just to get through this second lockdown that we're in. Keep your mind and your body active.